what is mental health and what is mental illness?
Right? So when we talk about mental health, we are talking about our emotional aspect of life, our psychological aspect of life, our cognitive aspect of life, and our social aspect of life. Child engaging in behaviors of cutting themselves or risky behaviors on social media, that those could also be telltale signs. So I think mental health education, and this should start at the school curriculum piece. I am ambitious and I feel like this could actually start at grade one, right? When we talk about body art here, there's also a lot of things like body art, or the type of body art is used to symbolize gang affiliations, where people start doubting their own accomplishments, where people start being scared of being exposed as a fraud. That is what imposter syndrome is. And with the overworking comes that I have to be perfect, because if I'm anything less than perfect, it's my worth is going to be questioned. I think another big thing is that, which I absolutely love about Gen Zs, is they are slowly starting to reject the hustle culture.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Be With You show where we talk about you and find a way for you to live a better life. And today I have a pleasure of speaking with an incredible guest, Oshin Deshmukh. She is a doctoral candidate in clinical psychology from the Chicago School. She has an extensive experience in therapy, research, and mental health advocacy, with a background of working with incarcerated individuals, children with neurodiversity, marginalized communities, trauma survivors. She brings in a unique perspective on the importance of mental health. Also a founder of Cerebral Living, which is a social media initiative where she highlights the importance of mental health. So today we are diving deep into how mental health is important for all of us. So, Shin, my first question to you is, what is mental health and what is mental illness?
Before I get into that, thank you for that amazing sort of introduction. That was great. I don't think I'll ever get used to people introducing me. It just feels so formal, so professional, and especially when we do this on a day-to-day basis, it's sometimes that professionality comes out of it, although it is your profession, but it becomes a part of who you are. Like it's you. So hearing all of this was amazing. I don't think I'll ever get used to it. So thank you for that. To answer your question now, which is what is mental health and how is it different from mental illness? I think the best way of talking about it is just thinking about it as almost like what is physical health and how is it different from physical illness, right? So when we talk about mental health, we are talking about our emotional aspect of life, our psychological aspect of life, our cognitive aspect of life, and our social aspect of life. So there's that emotions piece. There is the psyche piece of it, which includes so many other things. There's the cognitive piece, which includes how your brain works, and it includes how your memory works, it includes how your language works. It includes so many other things. It includes how you talk to people on a day to day, how you communicate with them. It talks to you about how your relationships are. So that all of this comes under mental health,
Okay.
right? Psyche, when we talk about psyche, it talks about who you are as a person, what do you do as a person, all of it. That comes under mental health. Everyone has mental health. The difference is not everyone has a mental illness or a diagnosed mental illness, right? Which is everyone has physical health, but only a few people have diabetes, or only a few people have hypertension. Not everyone has that. And mental illness is very similar to that. I love looking at mental health as from a perspective of it being on a spectrum, where on one end you're thriving, you're living your fullest life and being your full self. And on the other end, there is this aspect of languishing, which is you're not your fullest self, and you're someone who's struggling to get by with the day to day things, and that is often a starting point of what mental illness would look like and what that brings to our life. So that's what mental illness is, and that's how it's different from mental health.
Yeah, amazing, amazing definition almost you have given to all of us about the difference of two things, because it is often very difficult to define mental health, because physical health
Yeah.
comes in parameters. We have, when you talk about diabetes, we have sugar levels. When you talk about BP, we have the blood pressure levels. But mental health doesn't really have parameters.
I'm going to say the field and the professionals and the scholars in the field are really working towards making this something that's similar to a hard science, as we call it, like
Perfect.
physics,
Yeah,
chemistry,
yeah.
mathematics, right? We talk about it as hard sciences, and people in the field are working towards making it that. We have a lot of tests. We have a lot of standardized tests where there are rules and regulations of how do we go about with administering the
Diagnose.
test. There are rules with how there are these parametrics that
Mhm.
these results from the tests are compared against, and then people look at it, and then the licensed professional will also sort of go through all of that and accordingly diagnose the person. So I wouldn't say that there are no parametrics per se, because there are, because and there are also these manuals that we use to diagnose someone. It's not something that just happens willy-nilly out of the blue. There's a lot that goes behind it as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe the parameters are not really so known to all of us.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the case.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then going to the next question, with the stigma surrounding the therapy, what is the first step a person can take if somebody wants to get into that therapy room? What is the first step? How can we diagnose, or how can we know that I need therapy, and how to, approach it?
I think that's a great question, because all of us, we struggle with figuring out, do I need therapy? Am I one of those people who might need therapy? But I think before I jump into that, I want to talk about the piece that you don't need to diagnose yourself with
Yeah.
anything. The professional that you would seek help from is there to help you with therapy or a diagnosis, whatever you need, right? But the second piece is, it's not just people with diagnosable or severe mental health difficulties
That
that that it's not just them that need therapy. Therapy is so much more. It's available. It's an open space for everyone who needs a listening ear. It's everyone who needs a holding space. It's for everyone, right? And that's the beautiful part of therapy. I I think of myself that I'm so lucky to be able to hold that space for people, because right now I think I'm working with a lot of kiddos. I work at a school. I don't work. I intern at the school. I'm an intern there. So I think the biggest part is that some moment I'm talking to them about how academics is stressful, how reading is stressful. But the next moment I'm talking to them about, oh my God, there's a birthday party that I'm so excited to attend, and all of that. The next moment I'm talking about, oh, I'm having trouble building friendships. The next moment I'm talking about, my parents are maybe getting divorced, and that's coming up, and that's causing me a lot of issues. So there's this wide range of things that people talk about, and a wide range of things that they need help with.
yeah,
And the therapy space is for everyone. So to answer your question of what what is that first sign, right? So I think a few telltale signs are, if you see that you're having some restlessness, if you feel like, you know what, maybe I'm overthinking a lot, I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of racing thoughts, maybe I'm having difficulty concentrating, those are a few signs. If you feel like, I feel detached, I just don't feel anything, I feel like this emotional numbness sort of setting in, if I feel like, my sleep is changing, I either can't sleep at all at night, or I'm sleeping too much. So that can be a sign. A sign is, am I eating too much? Am I eating very less? Those are different signs. We can see almost like this lack of motivation that sometimes come into people. There's a loss of interest where everything that I used to find interesting before, I don't find anything of that sort interesting now, right? It could be a sign of, oh, maybe I'm feeling a little paranoid, I'm having difficulty trusting others. There's so many different things because the human nature is so beautifully complex. I think there are so many different things. Or the first sign or the first step of coming to therapy could be, you know what, I think I want to grow in life. I feel
Yeah.
like there's a part of stagnancy that's coming in, and I want to grow. I want to see the potential that I hold. I want to get to know myself better, and I want to get to that point. So I think it's just so vast, but these are a few signs that you can come across.
So, like, what I understand from this is you don't need to be, put down or, feel depressed to need therapy. You could just want growth and you would, step into that room. So, I think if you need help, you should take help. That's,
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you don't need help in the way we talk about professional help, but we talk about it in terms of, I just need someone who listens to me
yeah,
and who will guide me. But that's something that therapy does too. What therapy does not do
hmm,
is give advice.
yeah,
The therapist is not going to be like, okay, this is what you should do. The therapist is going to help you get insight into what works best for you, for who you are as a person, and that's how you take it from there.
yeah.
So I think it can be anything, and I really urge people to take that step. So I mean, of course, people will think about this in terms of, oh, she's a therapist, that's why she's saying it. But being a therapist, I myself am also in therapy, so it really helps a lot. And I am saying this from having been on both sides,
Yeah.
having people's and clients' experiences of what differences they've seen within themselves, and also having experienced that myself of what difference have I seen in myself from being in therapy. So, yeah.
So this is while when we are talking about adults. So when we come to
Mhm.
children, how can a parent know or a teacher know that the child in front of them needs
Mhm.
therapist or somebody to talk to?
I think the biggest thing is that children don't always necessarily have the language to explain what we are able to talk about, right? So it could show up in a lot of different ways.
Mhm.
It could show up as, you know what, maybe like we spoke about a few things, like the difficulty concentrating, it comes up with kids as well. That you see that in terms of, I possibly cannot attend to what the teacher is talking to. I cannot concentrate. I have focusing difficulties. So there's that. There could be something that parents see and are able to pick up on really quickly, parents and teachers, is the loss of interest in studies. I think that is another thing. But there's also like this sudden withdrawal that you can see, a possible way of like an increase in irritability. You could see that, okay, maybe the child is getting too many stomach aches, maybe the child is getting a lot of headaches, the child is feeling very tired and weak. A lot of these things can come up. Some things that are slightly bigger are maybe things like, the child engaging in self-harm, the child engaging in behaviors of cutting themselves, or risky behaviors on social media, that those could also be telltale signs. So I think picking up on those signs and just opening a door for your child to have a conversation with you. It's not an interview, it's not an interrogation. That is not what it is. It's a conversation. And I think it's really, really, really important for parents as the adults in the relationship to recognize that and to open that door
Yeah.
by showing their child that they can be trusted, that it's not just about, when they think about their parents, it's not just about physical safety, it's also about emotional safety, and that their parents can provide them with that, irrespective of what they're going through. And the child is only going to be able to tell you all of those things that tell you that they're going through something only when they know and feel emotionally safe with you.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. I think some of the other things that we as clinicians and therapists also see is that a lot of this also comes up in the child's play. We see a lot of these things come up in the child's art. A lot of these things come up, and those are also some signs that you can see. Some signs are, there are other physical signs, like you see that the child comes to school with bruises. The teacher at that point can inquire more. What happened? How did this happen? Where did this happen? There's so much more that goes into it, right? I think just as an adult, being vigilant of what is the child typically like, and are there any changes coming into the child's behavior?
Yeah.
That's the biggest sort of thing. And do not hesitate. The child wants to feel like they're a part of you, they're a part of your family. That's all they want, right? And they are a part of you and a part of your family, but they also want to feel like that.
Feel it. Yeah.
So, and a lot of times we feel like, as an adult, showing the child is enough. They see, I mean, I put food on the table, I give them shelter or a roof on their head. That should be enough. But for the child, it is the bare minimum that you can do because you brought them into this world, right? So the emotional safety piece, for you to tell them that I'm here for you to tell them that, we will get through this together. Whatever it is, you can trust me, and I got this. I got you. There's
Yes.
nothing that you can do that would make my love for you shake. I think that is what the child wants to hear.
Yeah.
But
So this is what we talked about children, but once they step into their teenagers, they are not really
hmm,
that transparent. And at the same time, they have to make a lot of choices, their career choices, they are growing up, their hormones are maybe showing their effects. So how can we, provide teenagers around us a safe space when mental health is considered, emotional health is considered?
yeah, I love this question because I think the biggest part, which while we talk about the child, we talk about their parents and the caregivers and the immediate system. I think with teenagers, you move slightly beyond that immediate system and that immediate circle of support. When we're talking about teenagers, we move to a bigger part, which is we're now talking about teachers, we're talking about peers, we're talking about, other mentors and maybe say coaches and this and that, right? All of that comes in. So now it becomes a societal and a community piece as opposed to just the family piece. And I think, and this is something that's a big part in the school that I intern at right now, which is use it. Yes, they have us as interns who are school counseling interns, but then there are what we also do is that we go into the classes and we conduct literally sessions on what are different emotions, how do these emotions come into play. So talking about mental health in a education setting is the biggest piece, and I think it's a big piece, not just in terms of bringing awareness but also normalizing it, right? Normalizing that conversation about, okay, maybe I am feeling a certain type of way. This is the age where you start giving, or where language starts developing, where cognition starts developing, where maturity sets in. Now is the time for kids to have more words for how they're feeling,
Yeah.
right? So
Just a
that
minute,
is a big
just a
piece.
minute. I
Yeah,
love how defined this age where kids actually put their feelings into words. So yeah,
yeah.
truly. Yeah.
Absolutely, because before this, I think when I think of adolescence, right, I don't start at 13, but it's for for people it's just so it's fluid because for everyone it comes in different ways,
Yeah.
and even for the same child some things might develop before, some things might take some time catching up. But I think that's the piece where language is an important piece of understanding and being the social animal that you are, right? You're going into society, you're talking about people, you're talking to people, you're being with people, you're now going to turn into a full-fledged adult. You're preparing for that, and language is a big piece. So I think mental health education, and this should start at the school curriculum piece. I am ambitious, and I feel like this could actually start at grade 1, right? We have little kiddos and we talk to them about how someone's feeling sad, and I think these Pixar and Disney movies are doing such an amazing job with depicting different emotions. We have little Riley come in, she has happiness, she has sadness,
Yeah.
she has anxiety, and I love the fact that all of these emotions are coming in, that kids are seeing this, they have access to it, and now they have the words, right? And this should start at the very beginning, and then you move on to building that. So you move on to understanding that actually anger and agitation can look different. Anger and or maybe sadness and depression are different. Shame and guilt are different. These are the words that kids start parsing out when they're in their adolescence. So I think that's a big thing. And having those words in school curriculums is so helpful. The second piece is, I think, allowing them, and this is a big piece for kids now, right? Because it's when we were kids, we had these communities of peers outside the house where we'd go engage with them outside the house.
Yeah.
That has sort of reduced now. That has sort of gone down now. And there is a rise in virtual communities as well. So, supporting kids in building those safe virtual communities, and while making sure that there's a balance in their virtual life and their real life, I think is so important. It cannot, at this point, it possibly cannot just be you don't create a virtual community for yourself, because that is taking that part away from them. It's the piece of, yes, there is this virtual community that you're a part of. We make sure that it's safe, we make sure that it's healthy, we make sure that it follows all the parameters that we want it to follow, and that there's a balance with the fact that okay, there's this other real life group, right, that you're a part of. You get to meet people, you get to go out, you get to have that physical contact with people where you see them. Sometimes there's a little bit of rough and tumble play that kids engage in. All of that, you need all of that to develop as a child, as an adolescent, as an individual. And that's a big piece. I think another piece to that is when we there are a lot of these communities and clubs here. I am unsure of what the situation looks like in India when we talk about this, but there are these after school clubs, after school programs that kids get to be a part of, right? And a lot of these programs are like these peer support programs where an older child guides and mentors a younger child,
Okay.
be it social issues, be it communication issues, be it mental health, be it career. There's so many different ways in which these younger children are mentored by these older children. I think that is again a wonderful way of helping adolescents, because when we're talking about adolescents, we're talking about the fact that okay, these are older kids. They're not children, but they're still children. They're developing, right? And now they're going beyond the primary circle of the household, and they're moving into their own life as a communal social being. So now the impact and influence of peers start increasing. So let's use this impact into, maybe there's an older cousin that your child is really close to. Bring them on, help have them watch movies together, throw these just after school, just hangout sessions where they are able to just talk to each other and run ideas by each other. They also have that confidant within each other then. And I think just having that model in front of them is so helpful for them. So I think those are some things that we could possibly consider and should consider when we talk about adolescence.
Yeah, it's like helping them develop the societal skills and also making them feel safe while they are at it. So
Absolutely.
that's the balance that we have to strike. Yeah. So when talking about adolescents and teenagers, I would like to ask you personally that what made you choose this field? Because it looks really interesting from where I see it.
It is. I love working with little kiddos and adolescents. I think adolescents are that's the toughest group to work with. And this is coming from a person who has worked in jails. I think it's because there's so much nuance to it while working with adolescents, right? You're still talking to little kiddos who think that they are old enough and they
The same
want to
time.
be accepted. There's that they want to be liked, but they also want to be a little aloof and they want to be cool, and then there's so much to it, and they're just learning how to be their own self. It's very interesting. And I think also the fact that I have like a younger sister who herself is an adolescent right now. But I think when I started and when I decided that this is something that I wanted to pursue, I actually started in a very different way, where I started at a place where I was like, okay, you know what? I actually want to do criminal psychology.
Okay.
And that's what I decided. And I took a deep dive. And that deep dive was a little too deep. It scared me, honestly, how deep the dive was. And it made me pull back a little, where I was like, you know what? I am going to go in a completely opposite direction and I'm going to explore. I'm going to explore what's out there for me. What are some things that I could possibly do? And my first job in India was at a not for profit organization with little kids, and they were from like 1.5, 2 years of age. Yeah, 2 years to like 8 years. My youngest was 2 years old, could barely speak. So from that's where we started. That's where I started working with kids, and I absolutely enjoyed it. So from there, I think I'm on that journey of what really calls me, what really pulls me. And so far for me, I think kids, adolescence, and parenting is really interesting. So let's see what that journey really actually holds for me.
Yeah, that sounds great for you. And also, while reading your work, I came across your thesis, which talked about
Mhm.
the comparison between body esteem and decision-making styles of individuals or adults who are tattooed and non-tattooed. So just throw some light because it just looks interesting to me.
And it's so different because I don't think there's a lot of studies that are done on this in the recent times in a country like India, right? That's something that I'm gonna start off by saying. Also, the piece that when I was studying, and this is like an old thesis, right? This is 2017, 2019 when I was working on this, and there was this piece of where I was very recently tattooed. So body art has always fascinated me, but when I started researching a lot, like I went deeper into it, I realized that, actually body art is very traditional to what India as a country is.
Yeah.
Their body art is very typically seen in rural areas, and as colonization came in, we started moving away from what we used to engage in. So it's always been a thing, but we started moving away from that. So that's the first piece. The second piece is now it's being looked at as a sign of, if the person has body art, it means maybe they're not a good person. They are not, maybe they didn't think it through. They're not going to get a job. there's just so many things that we talk about when we talk about body art, right? When we talk about body art here, there's also a lot of things like body art, or the type of body art is used to symbolize gang affiliations. It's
Okay.
used to symbolize um, your beliefs. It's so many different things when we talk about body. It's a way of expressing yourself. So I was really intrigued by that, and when I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, this is something that people use to express themselves. By able to express themselves in a way that is so permanent,
Okay.
that has to have an impact on them. And that was my starting point of studying body esteem, because when it's a very permanent thing, a permanent expression on your own skin, right? So how does that impact your self-esteem, your body image? How does it impact? And I saw that there it was a correlational study, but there is a moderate correlation that we found that between people with body art and tattoos and between their body esteem. So that was another interesting thing. With decision making styles, honestly, I'm trying to remember what the results looked like. But I think from what I can remember, it looked like there were a few decision making styles that we were, when I say we, I mean me and my uh, thesis chair,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
supervisor, that we were considering. And yeah, it's not coming to me right now, but I will definitely want to talk more about it with, because from what I remember, decision making styles also do have an impact, where people say that, decision making styles, people don't really think about it. But I think from what I am able to remember right now, that that wasn't just the case. There was, people did actually put thought in it. That was what it showed like, that they were very determined, they were able to see what, and figure out what the consequences of their actions would look like. But there was this another decision making style, which was like someone that depended on other people to make decisions. That was also seemed, I think, I remember that being somewhere a little bit higher as well in correlation, but I cannot place it right now. But
Okay.
we will talk more about that.
Yeah, sure. I found it very interesting. That is exactly why I brought it up here. So, when coming from your thesis to let's come to something which is so talked about today, which is imposter syndrome. So, if you could, throw some light on it and let us know how does it really affect us, and especially as women, how does it affect us?
And it's such a big thing, because especially as a grad student,
Yeah,
imposter syndrome is sometimes, it becomes your best friend, right? And yeah, because you're in the field where you're a student, but you're also a professional, but you're still a student, you're
yeah.
still
So
working.
before going ahead, just give us a definition, like what is it, and then
What
we
is
can see.
imposter
Yeah,
syndrome?
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's almost like a pattern of thinking, where people start doubting their own
yeah,
accomplishments, where people start being scared of being exposed as a fraud. That is what imposter syndrome is. And it does not stem from a place of, oh, I don't have these accomplishments. I do, but I feel like I'm not good enough,
yeah.
and someone's gonna see how I'm being fraudulent. That's what imposter syndrome is.
So it's a
Yeah.
lot of self-doubt. Yeah.
Yes, it is self-doubt. Absolutely.
And how does it, I think talking about women, I think it affects women a lot. How do you see it?
I think with women, and solely because of the different pieces that come into, that, every person obviously is like a partner, sibling, friend, child, all of that. But I think the way these, because we're specifically talking about women, the way these gender expectations show up, like, yes, you go to work, you have your own career, but you also put just as much into your personal life, right? And sometimes more. So the biggest way it shows up in women is, you know, and I breaks my heart, but it breaks my heart to see how overworked and overprepared and undervalued women are solely because of this.
Very true.
Solely because they have to prove their worth at every single step.
Yes.
I have to prove my worth as a child. I have to prove my worth as a sister. I have to prove my worth as a friend. I have to prove my worth as my at my job, as a
As a
mother, as a
professional.
wife, all
Yeah.
of that. So I think the proving your worth part is so big, which leads them to be incredibly overworked. I think that's the biggest piece. The second piece is definitely with the overworking comes that I have to be perfect, because if I'm anything less than perfect, it's my worth is going to be questioned, and it's gonna seem like I'm a fraud, right? Because I made a mistake. When in reality, mistakes are a part and parcel of who humans are. So it's that pressure to be perfect that comes in. I think another different way in which this manifests is, and this is very interesting with women, which is there are two things, right? There's this people pleasing that we see, which is I am going to engage in constantly seeking external validation as opposed to trusting my own judgment. For example, and this is something that I've also seen myself, and I've caught myself doing it. Like when I'm talking about something that is a topic that I have chosen, that is a topic that I've really studied hard about, it's
Important.
researched hard about. Yeah, it's my topic. And at the end of it, while I know that I've done my bit in talking about it and explaining it really well, I will ask, does that make sense? And it's the sort of that the framing of that question, does that make sense, is not, does it make sense to you as a listener, but does what I said make sense, right? It's that thing of trying to get external approval instead of trusting my own ability as a woman. And it also comes up in different ways of like, I'm being hesitant in speaking up in professional settings. There's just so much that you see this in, right? You also see that because I feel like a fraud, maybe I'm not gonna ask for a promotion, maybe I'm not gonna ask for what I'm worth, I'm not gonna ask for pay raises and all of that,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to ask to lead a team when I know I can, when I have all of it. I might as well follow. But I also love the fact that there are changes coming into play, and women are really coming into their own beings and their own selves and starting to just own up to their potential. So I absolutely love it. It warms my heart to see that.
Thank you so much for explaining this to us so, in depth, because it is not just self-doubt, but it is layers to it. And at the same time,
Absolutely.
yeah, and at the same time, it is so common. Like, even I do it so many times. Like, I'm a dentist, I see a case, and every time I come back home, I recheck all the findings and is it really that? And, you know, even if I have done so many hundreds of these cases. So yeah, this is so common. Yeah. So when talking about,
Absolutely. If I could just add a little something, I think what you said that, there's so many layers to it, and that is so true. I think mental health is about all of those layers. It's not just you are a sum of all of this. You are a product of all of these layers that you've incorporated and you've gotten as a gift from your family, your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors, the community that you live in. And yes, I think the biggest topic right now when we talk about, as you being a product of a lot of this generational trauma. But I think what again a big piece is that we also have generational resilience. And a lot of times we forget to acknowledge that, which I think is so important. And it's really important for us to think about these real gifts that have been passed down to us and just really acknowledge it and accept those gifts.
Yeah, true. And when talking about work, there is a lot of discussion happening about work-life balance, a 70-hour work week, or 4 days work week in some countries. So when all of this is discussed, what is your opinion of how can one maintain a work-life balance in their lives as a therapist?
I think this is a really interesting question of how can one maintain work-life balance. It's we live in a capitalist society. We at this point I think we should accept, all of us should accept it, and we should talk about it, that we do live in a capitalist society where money is everything, right? The hustle culture is real,
True.
and people are, it's not that one job is enough for you to maintain and create the lifestyle that you want.
You want. Yes.
Obviously social media is not helping, right? Because you see these filthy rich billionaires and millionaires living the lifestyle and that they want to showcase, and that makes you want more and more and more. But what ends up happening is burnout, which is very real, right? We don't realize this, but it does happen. You're just exhausted, you are tired from just constantly going. And this is something that I love, that I absolutely make sure I tell people, is that if you don't rest by yourself, your body is going to make sure that you do, and that won't be at a convenient time, right? Because a lot of times we keep pushing that, oh, I'll rest when I have some time, I'll take a holiday when I am not as busy. But if you don't yourself take that break, your body is going to make sure that you do
That
at
you
some point. At that point, your body is not going to be like, is this convenient for Oshin to take a break? Your body is just going to be like, oh, if she needs a break and this is how she gets a break. Be it during, during your finals, be it when you have a really important business meeting, whatever. Right. So I think burnout is a big thing when we talk about this. But going back to your question of how can we maintain this work-life balance, I think it really comes from the understanding that who is benefiting from me going above and beyond my wage, right?
beautifully put. Yeah.
That's the first part. Who is benefiting from me going above and beyond my wage? Because the way we see it, and this is very real, because yes, these companies talk about how you are a part of the family, but if something were to happen and you were to get laid off, they always have a spot open to hire someone else,
Yeah. You will be
right?
replaced. Yeah.
So in the capitalist society, you're just a way to get to a place, not for you, for other people, oftentimes, and you are very replaceable. So I think just having that understanding is a starting point that allows you to see that burnout is not really something to be glorified. It's not really something that we should be like, oh, I am so tired. Like there are people who talk about, oh, you know what? I only got like 6 hours of sleep last night. Where you hear someone come in and be like, oh, this is nothing. I got 4 hours of sleep last night. But it's
Yeah.
not a thing that it's not something that you one up. We need to stop glorifying it, and we need to come to a collective understanding that this is resting is actually productive. It's going to help you be who you are. It's going to help you do what you're doing and to continue doing that. But also, I think one of the ways, and this is a biggest thing that that's huge,
Yeah,
that in which we can ensure a work-life balance is learning how to say no.
yeah,
It's a small two-letter word, but it holds a big meaning, and it's not just work-life balance, but it's part of any boundary that you talk
yeah,
about, right? We always end up taking more than what we can deal with on our plate, and that's something that we need to stop doing. So being able to say no is a part of self-care. It's a part of taking care of your own being, right? Maybe I cannot pick up my friend from airport tomorrow. And it's okay to say that,
yeah.
as opposed to being like, I have to be at work at 5 a.m. So what I can do is I can get up I can wake up
Or
early.
somehow stretch your timeline.
Yeah, I mean, yes, all of us, we want to go above and beyond for the people that we love and care about. But then when we're talking about work-life balance specifically, who is benefiting from it? Are you at any point benefiting from it? So thinking about that, I think thinking about how can you say no? It's not selfish. It is essential. There is that piece. Then are we really able to, and are we making some time for our own self? I think when you start thinking about that, your brain is slowly going to start thinking about, or even if for the fact that, even if you start thinking about, what do I like? As a child, I like playing video games. As a child, I like going hiking or whatever. As an adult, how can I play, right?
Yeah,
That's a big thing because I think we think about play as something for kids and we forget that play exists in life as adults.
yeah,
So we have nothing to fill our lives with sometimes. It's it's just this aspect of, okay, my life is my work. So there is no work-life balance when that happens.
yeah.
But if you do have something that interests you apart from work, you will want to naturally gravitate towards that.
True.
So I think those are some things that over the top of my mind that I can think about, like these are some things that we can do to start building that work-life balance. Because you have to get you have to start treating yourself as a person first, as opposed to an employee, right? As opposed to just another wheel in the machine, right? You're not just that. You're a person. That's when we understand that, that's when we move to work-life balance. Or that's when we move to the understanding of life, and that's when you come to the understanding of work-life balance.
Okay.
But that won't happen until you think of yourself as a person.
Yeah, I'm not an employee. True.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've almost come to the end of our discussion here. So I would like to ask you the million-dollar question of how exactly is the mental approach of a millennial and a Gen Z today different?
I love this again
Yeah,
because we see so many differences. I think the biggest difference, again, with millennials and Gen Zs, I think Gen Zs recognize that they are a person first.
wow. Yes.
Millennials find that hard to do because that was also the time that they grew up in. They saw the financial struggles that a lot of their families and their parents went through, and they want to be able to support their families in that. Gen Z is a generation that came after that, which did not which, yes, of course, every generation has their own stressors and triggers and all of that. But I think when we think about it on a larger communal basis and larger societal basis, we see that the financial ups and downs were big and major when the millennials were sort of growing up, right? This for Gen Zs was slightly lesser. So that's another piece. Another big piece is that for millennials, there were no conversations around mental health. There were no conversations around, oh, we have an uncle in the family who might have autism. No, there's an uncle in the family. He doesn't really talk about anything much. Or the terms that they've heard growing up is, oh, he or she is crazy, right? So, but these terms started changing with the kind of awareness that started getting, or that started coming about in society. Gen Z has access, grew up with slightly more access to it.
Okay.
So when we take all of these things into consideration, I think those sort of play a big role in how they navigate social situations and the mental health
Mental
realm,
health.
but also the fact that for Gen Zs, social media plays such a big role in how their mental health is influenced and impacted. Because millennials know of a life that existed without
Without
social
social
media.
media.
So there's that aspect. For Gen Zs, it's harder to separate that from who they are.
Mhm.
So I think that is also that influences how they take on to the world
Work.
of
Yeah.
mental health and the realm of mental health. So Gen Zs are a lot more vocal about it. They're more vocal about mental health. They're more vocal about therapy. They're more vocal about setting boundaries. Millennials have a lot of difficulties doing that. The millennials experience a lot of difficulty saying no. Millennials experience a lot of difficulties, talking about that I'm in therapy. I can, like, it's
Yeah.
something that has to be still kept hush hush. But Gen Zs are talking about it on their social media, and you see all of this coming into picture. So I think another big thing is that, which I absolutely love about Gen Zs, is they are slowly starting to reject the hustle culture, which has absolutely engulfed the millennials. So I think we as millennials can absolutely take a thing or two from Gen Zs
Gen Z.
about that.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your view. And the last question I would like to ask you is what is your food for thought, to our listeners today as a therapist?
Wow, I think because there's just so many. There is just so many. I think what I would love to say is that give yourself the permission to evolve and grow. You are not supposed to be the same person forever for your entire life.
Yeah.
You are supposed to be growing, you are supposed to
Evolving
be evolving at your own rate on your own timeline. So give yourself the time and space and the permission that you need to do that.
and
And
growth
it can
is
be
natural, right?
it's painful sometimes. And you as a dentist absolutely know how when babies start teething,
Yeah.
they have a
Growth,
huge it's a growth spurt, but it's painful.
painful.
It's incredibly painful, but it's natural. It happens. So give yourself the permission to evolve. Sit with the discomfort, validate your feelings, and it's just, I think, be the person that you are.
So thank you so much. Like after having this wholesome conversation with you, I can see what amazing therapist you are, and also you could be an amazing friend to all of the people around you, sharing your wisdom to them also. So thank you so much for being on this show and helping us out and putting some light on mental health and how important it is to live as a person and not as an employee. So I would request all of our listeners to follow you, your Instagram handle, Cerebral Living, and also share this episode to a friend who might, need it. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and Instagram channel. So thank you again, Ocean, for being here on the show. Thank you. Bye bye. To all of you all, don't forget mental health is your priority. Bye bye.
Sharing that. Bye. Thank you, Samita.